All right, so again, good afternoon. My name is David Walton. I am the event and program manager for the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us Miss Ariana Blossom. Ariana will be leading us through a webinar on strategic business planning alignment post-COVID-19. We're thankful to have our sponsors, Tompkins Trust Company, bringing us this L.E.A.R.N series webinar, another in our series of webinars that we've been hosting during this pandemic. Today, during the webinar, we will discover how a win room will rally cross-functional teams around revenue goals, disaster scenario planning, or effectively and rapidly responding in a crisis. Today, what to expect is when to use a win room to massively improve cross-departmental collaboration, how it can align your team around mission-critical needs like marketing strategies, organizational values, and revenue drivers, and you'll all be able to walk away with some basics to design your own win room. Just a couple of housekeeping things. Thank you all for having your mics muted. That's really awesome. In the event that you have any questions for Ariana today, please feel free to use the chat box that can be turned on by now. I'm sure we're all Zoom experts. So please feel free to use the chat. Ariana will be pulling some questions that you may have during the presentation today, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. Again, thank you all for being here. And without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Blossom.
All right. Thanks, David. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Yeah, we are living in a beast of a year. And I am going to ask you to imagine that we are living in a snow globe. So you imagine that this snow globe is in China, was given a really hard shake back in December and January, when suddenly you got 100 million people that go into lockdown because of COVID. And then all the supply chains that moved from China out into the world got cut. And so companies all over the world and even countries were left scrambling, trying to figure out what they were going to do next. And then it comes to the US, and our snow globe gets a really hard shake in February and March as we see infections hit Seattle and New York City. It spreads across the US. And we see ourselves go into lockdown in New York State. Some states go into lockdown, some don't. Then there's a fight about that. And a whole lot of things just really, for so many people, go right up in the air. And all that, unprecedented economic growth that we were seeing suddenly gets flatlined. We're now officially in a recession. And there are a lot of questions that people are left with as a result of this. And just when we start to see the sun kind of peeking over the horizon in our area, where we realize we can go into phase 1 and now we're going into phase 2, then we get another hard shake in our country with the video of a police officer killing George Floyd. And then it sparks protests all across the country and in fact the world. And then there's the question about the role of the police that's happening around the country. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because all these sort of traditional ways that we've been working in businesses and even society, how society functions, has been upended and is up for being questioned. So when a community or a set of communities are looking at even something like the police and saying, do we need the police? Do we need something different than the police? That's a very significant change to be having across the country. And to be asking the questions about how does my business operate? How do I open the doors and let people back in safely? These are really big questions. And there are not a lot of really easy answers to some of this stuff. But there are 3 themes that have emerged during this time. And I'm going to share those 3 themes first, because when we talk about strategic planning or you want to start a win room, the thing that's important is to have a higher level context in which to understand where we are going and how this might eventually impact or even is impacting your business right now. So those 3 themes, there we go, are speed, digital, and human. And these are happening all around the world. And I'm going to dive into each one of these to help you kind of to unpack it. So we'll start with speed. This is a quote that I got from McKinsey, which is clear goals, focused teams, and rapid decision-making has replaced corporate bureaucracy. A lot of companies, for ones that didn't have to shut down, that had to stay open, that had to figure it out, explosive growth, or even just trying to navigate losing one customer segment while holding on to another one, they had to adjust the way that their teams have functioned. So, and a good example of this was a company in the Middle East, actually had 1,000 employees that worked in the movie theater business. And in 2 days, they retrained all 1,000 people to work in grocery retail because of COVID. 2 days, retraining 1,000 people in 2 days. I mean, that is a massive shift. And if you think about in November of 2019, if that executive team had been asked, hey, do you think you would ever be able to retrain your employees, 1,000 employees, to shift that much? Do you think they would have said it was possible? What they probably would have said is, like, why would we even need to bother? Now what's happened is that the unimaginable not just becomes possible, it's what's happening. Before COVID, companies were investing billions of dollars in trying to get their teams to respond in the ways that they are now, and to execute on initiatives and rapid decision making. And as one business owner had said, now that we've operated at this speed, how can we ever say again that we can't? And you may be seeing this inside your company, which is, some things have had to happen a lot faster. And then it leaves the question open, which is, are we going to have to continue to operate at that pace? And you may, I don't know, depends on what's going on. Just as a larger context, there were companies that used China as their primary supplier, and they switched to Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India in 1 week. 1 week, all those supply chains got gobbled up. I mean, that's massive shifts that are happening all around the world. And leaders are having to re-examine how their businesses operate, how they even identify, and how they're going to grow in what's likely to just continue being a volatile market. One approach that some teams have taken on is called multi-speed management. And even if you're a small micro enterprise or a larger business, this is a way of looking at things that might be useful for you. Multi-speed management means you're navigating both the right now, what has to get done right now, what's going to happen in the near future, and then how do you shape the next normal? So you're looking at 3 timelines at once. And the majority of your time, if you're doing this, is going to be spent on navigating the right now. But, being able to stay ahead of this, because this is not the last of the, volatile events that we're going to experience. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. But in order to do multi-speed management, you're really going to need to have the right team with a clear focus, because what you don't want to end up having is those sort of analysis paralysis, where people just keep giving more information, and before you know it, you've got a 90-minute meeting where nobody got anything done and nobody's accountable for any tasks. You want focus. You want to be able to go in a room and say, or a virtual room, and say, look, this is the problem that we're facing. We need solutions. We need to figure out what to do next. And you need a team that really leans in on that, because you don't want to get into the sort of petty squabbles that happen when people don't have direction. You want accountability. And when we talk about a win room, that's going to come back. We're going to come back to that. Yeah. So as I said, we can expect that the volatility really is going to continue likely into next year throughout the world, and maybe even beyond. I mean, we're officially in a recession now, so it's going to take years of economic, rebuilding. And the adaptations that you're taking on now may very well be practice runs for future Black Swan events. The one thing that we're not really talking about more nationally right now is about climate change. And that's because we have so many other things on our plates. But climate change is going to disrupt the food supply chain. It's going to disrupt migration of people. It's going to have an impact on health and mortality. So it's going to require the same level of rapid decision-making and flexibility that COVID has asked of us. And so that's something to keep in mind, and because more challenges are going to arise. Okay, so The second point, so that's speed. The speed of things is just moving a lot faster, and we're being asked to make decisions faster, and that's upending the way that we've done business. Now, digital, because remember, it's speed, digital, and human. Digital being the second one is that we are currently in what's called the fourth industrial revolution, which is really a reshaping of society and of work through automation and digital tools. And we all see it in the self-checkout line in grocery stores. That's automation at work. We also use Siri and other voice-activated technology. And we also see it, we saw it in winemaking. My husband and I went out to a winery in California called Palmas. And this is a company that has really embraced the use of technology in making wine. So every day drones fly over the vines and they measure, and it measures sunlight and then also responds to a sensor that's in the soil that says what the soil content is. It measures precipitation, and all that information gets projected back into the building, where people can then make real-time adjustments to the chemicals, to the water, and to insects. And when you think about that intentional use of water in California, where they've been in a drought for 10 or 15 years now, that's going to be something that more agriculture is going to need to adopt as we move forward. When we're talking about automation, a McKinsey study found that 50% of all globally, all current work activities can be made automatable with technology we already have. And 6 out of 10 current occupations have more than 30% of activities that can be automated. I mean, these are going to reshape societies. I mean, you've probably already heard about, when we get to the point of self-driving automobiles, then we're going to be thinking about what that means for all the people who drive the cars and the buses and the limos, and what happens to that industry. Because like a lot of the things that we humans create to scale, it has a positive impact in one place and a negative impact in another place. So, when we're looking at automation, what we might see is some industries start to go away and other ones get propped up. And on the upside is that it's expected to create a 2% bump in global GDP and increase global prosperity. So there's a reason that I'm mentioning this for you, and some of you may think I don't know exactly what this has to do with me, but the point is that digitization, virtualization, these are all things that are here to stay. And you may be finding right now that there are technologies that you're going to need to bring on board in order to make your business responsive to your customers and to their expectations, because people's expectations has really shifted about work and about buying things, and the question about, how can I buy things safely? So also the acceleration to virtual work combined with automation is likely going to impact hiring. And so the Twitter and Square CEO Jack Dorsey has said that he's going to let all of his employees go full remote. And you're talking about thousands of people. And then when companies make that decision, then they are no longer bound geographically, when they're doing a search. They don't have to hire people from, pay to have people move to where they are. And so that may create more flexibility in finding talent for your business if you're able to go more remote for some positions. And it may also create more competition in this area for talent if people don't have to move and they can, work remotely. So it's just giving you kind of broad strokes on changes that may be coming. And some of this stuff was already happening, but it's really accelerated now after COVID. The other thing that I think is really interesting, just because I'm kind of a warm and fuzzy person, is this shift to working from home for a lot of companies. What it's done is it's humanized leaders. So when an employee's are seeing their CEOs or their presidents working from home, and they're like little square, the way you're seeing this little square of my office. And then they see a spouse walk by or kids run by, and it humanizes that leader. And the word authenticity was being used a lot before COVID. They were pushed for authentic stories. The feeling of that invisible barrier between the leader and employees was something that just kind of vexed people. And being able to have this, even though we're not actually face to face, it seems like it's really sort of democratized that and taken away that invisible barrier. There are companies that have done some interesting things, like bringing on guest speakers via Zoom to their team meetings for 15 or 20 minutes. They're finding that's just a really easy way to bring some value and some information to their teams. So it might be something worth thinking about if you're looking for a way to engage, keep your team engaged. Yeah, there's one little fun fact about digitization of this virtual work from home. Someone who had said that one of her clients said that they had 10,000 employees that all worked in India in the office, and then they had to shift in 72 hours. They had to take all of these people and send them home to work. But the problem is, most of these people had to ride the bus, and they had to carry their desktops. I mean, the logistics involved in some of the changes that we've seen have just been sort of mind-boggling. Okay, the human part of it. So pre-COVID and pre-protest, I mean, companies really talked a lot about caring about employee safety. They cared about diversity. But I'll tell you now, customers in particular are watching much more closely. They're looking to see if you're saying that you care about their safety, you care about diversity, or if you are backing it up with action. And this can have a real impact on the bottom line. So, yeah, one of our team members who's on today, she has this quote that says, you can't talk your way out of a problem you've behaved your way into. And the reason I bring it up is because it's this idea that you have to, when you're leading a business, you're going to have to match what you say with what you do. And a really good example of that has been Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's issued this statement titled, silence is not an option. And it's really, if you haven't read it, it's worth reading. But they didn't stop at just denouncing police brutality and white supremacy. What they did was they shared specific legislation that they were supporting, and they encouraged their customers to do so. So what I'm saying is that it's really about this type of action, meeting a clarity of message is what people are going to be looking for in terms of driving loyalty. So you want to think about, how are you speaking about these things, and then what actions are you able to sort of back those statements up with? Okay, many businesses they've worked faster and better than they ever dreamed possible just a few months ago. And if your business can capture and maintain that sense of possibility, you're going to find that it's an enduring sense of competitive advantage. I know it can feel like chaos. And one of the things that I've heard people talk about is how one day they're really focused and the next day they're exhausted. And I get it. I live it too. But when we're talking about this, if you can find that sense of opportunity is everywhere. Opportunity is still available. And if you can keep the mindset that that's the reality that you live in, then hopefully what you'll do is start to see the opportunities happen for you. Okay, so we've covered speed, digital, and human, and I've done it pretty quickly because I'm just trying to give you a high-level context for when you think about your own strategic planning. So 4 areas of strategic focus right now. One thing that's really happened is that strategic planning, because of COVID, has had to become a lot more responsive and agile and flexible than it has been before. Traditionally, it was often something where people would, leaders would get together and they would make up a strategic plan once a year. They would, and then they would share it with employees. And then, sometimes the strategic plan would just end up in a desk and not go anywhere. But so the 4 areas of strategic focus: recovering revenue, and this one is, well, I'll cover it, but it needs to happen quickly. Rebuilding operations, rethinking the organization, and accelerating the adoption of digital solutions. So let's start. And what you need to focus on right now is going to have something to do with, your industry, how hard COVID and the shutdown hit your business, your team's capacity, and really leadership courage, because you may find that you have to do things completely differently than you did before. So recovering revenue, you don't want to wait until everything is in full swing before you start to really focus on this one, because by then it's too late. The competition's already sort of moved in. You want to be engaging with your customers like now, really now. Even if you can't open the doors to them, keeping them engaged, letting them know that you're still there, and being front of mind as a leader in your industry and in this area is going to be really important. And to do this in terms of recovering revenue, it's really about adopting a mindset that favors a bias toward action. You want that mentality throughout your organization and throughout your team. You really want to be focused on, rather than analysis, you're looking at action. And also look at how your people work best. One of the things that happened is that leaders and organizations who weren't necessarily the best fit for solving particular problems then ended up sort of shifting their responsibilities to allow people who maybe wouldn't have seen like an organizationally good fit, but they had the right skills. So you might want to think about your team and how do you need to move them around to be able to solve really specific problems. So you don't think about it just from a top down. I mean, this has really been a flattening for a lot of organizations. So like 60% of businesses surveyed by McKinsey in early April said their new remote sales models were proving 30% more effective than the traditional ones. I mean, there are ways where, being remote may actually have created more of an advantage for you. But you want to start identifying new revenue possibilities as soon as possible, which may include winning back loyal customers, ensuring the customer experience is based in safety and health, because it's something like 60%, which seems low to me, but 60% of customers who were surveyed said that the health for themselves and their families is top of mind. And so when you're communicating about letting people come back in, safety is a real key. And then again, about clarity of message combined with action is when they come in, have you thought from the beginning of the customer journey to the end of the customer journey in your business in a way that communicates safety along every step? You may need to look at creating flexible payment terms, just because, now we're in a recession and things have shifted. And you may need to look at adjusting just pricing just based on data. As I said earlier about the multi-speed management mode, you are operating both in the right now in this and in the near future. But you really want to be thinking about from your customer's perspective, what do, when they walk in the door or if they engage on your website, are there places where there are barriers to them wanting to continue to moving forward that need to be addressed right now? Because customers or companies that really focus on the customer experience and they keep real-time insight on what's going on with each customer segment, those are the ones that get back to pre-crisis levels fastest. And if you're wondering how to engage and get more of your customers' insight, all the ways are there. Pick up the phone and just start calling them. Even if you haven't talked to them in months, there's really no expiration date on this. Pick up the phone, call, and if you need an easier way to do it, then pick up the phone and call your most loyal customers. Call the people who broadcast, how awesome they have thought that your business is. And ask them, when you think about coming back in the building or you are looking at services, what are your concerns? Because you want their feedback. Okay, we'll go to the next one, which is about rebuilding operations. Companies, larger companies, mid-market and beyond, they're really redesigning their operations and their supply chains to sort of prevent against future shocks like the one that we had December, January, February, March. And again, like I said, climate change is going to require a lot of flexibility and a rapid response and that sort of decision-making that we're seeing now from companies. So what you want to think about is operational resilience is really going to be key here. And this is something to think about when you're doing a win room, which of course I'm going to get to in a bit. But part of this is about, do you need to build a deeper or wider partnership ecosystem where you're sharing data, and who might those partners be? Do you need to think about, new customer value propositions? Does your business model itself need to be re-examined based on these changes? And do you need to focus on enhancing the customer experience? Rethinking the organization. A matrix or a flat organization may be the direction your organization needs to take. This is typically about, more larger businesses. Or do you need to create small, fast-acting teams that are really given authority to take charge of initiatives, that are there to delegate tasks, that can respond quickly? So you want to, it's about the rapid sharing of the right data, having the right talent matched to the challenges, and again, really having a bias in favor of action. And the fourth one is accelerating the adoption of digital solutions. I've touched on some of this, but really, we've seen therapists have to move to online sessions. We've seen K through 12 and college professors all have to move online to teach classes. Doctors conducting appointments online, live events going virtual. In fact, there's one fashion designer who, when her fashion show in New York City got canceled, she decided that she wasn't just gonna give up on it. She was going to put a fashion show live on Instagram. And what she did was she created she cut the women out of the dresses and she made the dresses move. If you get a chance, it's really incredible. But it's really, that's the kind of innovation that's available to companies right now, and to, and to leaders in companies. So, and also your customers' expectations may start to shift. They want, being able to book on a website or being able to order online, that ease of use is on people's minds. It's the way that they have been able to get through this. And to some extent, live events are never gonna, we're never gonna cancel live events forever, right? You're never gonna get the same experience with Lizzo or Dave Matthews Band, watching them on Zoom versus being in person. Those things are gonna come back. It's just gonna take some time. But there are other ways where perhaps your business can move to a more remote or digitized or virtual experience for your customers, and to smooth out their journey from start to finish with you. So as I said, strategic planning has really had to evolve and become much more agile and responsive. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to walk you through an example of work that we did with a mid-market manufacturer to rethink the organization from a leadership and strategic planning perspective, as a way to illustrate what's possible. So this client's a mid-market manufacturer, and a few of the challenges that we found when we sat down with them is that there were information sharing gaps across departments. There were silos across departments, which means people were just focused on themselves and they weren't collaborating. There was minimal brand awareness in the digital market space, so they didn't have much, in terms of the website and the Facebook. Those weren't being optimized. And then there were underdeveloped new product launch strategies that really needed to be looked at, because it was creating some chaos in the company. And then there was the shipping delays to customers. So that was one that, customers do not like it when you have to tell them that, oh, sorry, it's going to be a week, 2 weeks, maybe longer. And then there was also an unclear understanding of how to best support territorial sales reps as they best tried to support the market. And you can imagine that underneath each of these things that I'm listing, there were a whole subset of challenges that were as a result of these issues. So I'll start by saying that one of the challenges here is that when CEOs or leaders in companies talk about strategy to their employees, 70% of employees don't get it. So we have to think about how we communicate about strategy. Are we communicating in a way that people can get it, or are we talking over their heads? And we talked about strategy right now, like being able to tie it together with changes in the economy, changes in the local area, changes in hiring, and when you're asking someone to take on something like let's look at 3% growth. Where did you get the number from? Why does it matter? What does that actually mean in real dollars? And what does that mean to that person's job? What are they going to be expected to do? What are they responsible for in relationship to that number? And so it comes down to being able to kind of tell the right story for your employees when you're thinking about strategic planning. Okay, so what we did with this group was we sat down with their executive team and we really figured out how to position them to win. Because strategic planning is one of those things where, as I said earlier, often someone designs it and then they announce it to everybody in the company, and then 70% of the employees are like, sounds great, can I go back to work? And we wanted to make sure that this was not their experience. So what we did was we proposed the process, and it was a big one, was to be working together for a period of 18 to 24 months on this process, and it was going to involve their entire management team. So we wanted to make sure that we also got buy-in all the way down the line, and that can really be, a challenge, as I was saying, with the 70% of people not getting it. And also not tying the strategic plan directly to team functionality. How does your strategic plan directly tie to team functionality? Those are parts of the challenges that we had to address for this company. So what we did was we helped with the pitch that they were going to need to give to their 23-person management team, and how to roll out the structure the entire team is going to need moving forward. Our process was to use an offsite retreat, which is something that I tend to recommend very highly when you're trying to do this kind of work, because it helps people get out of the, answering the emails and people knocking on the doors. We're living in a slightly different time, so you may have to think about this being a virtual offsite. Anyway, so what we did was we took teams, the management team, and we put them into functional teams that were aligned with the strategic plan. So if you're looking at something like wanting to improve shipping, the issue with shipping delays, then you want to think about who needs to be in the room and who needs to be on the team to be focused on solving that problem. What we did was, so we got them in the room, we put them together in teams, we gave them documents like a team charter, like a SWOT, and others, and we asked them to start to brainstorm on how to achieve that particular strategic objective that they had been tasked with. We let them run with it. And this is really the thing when we talk about that sort of flexibility and rapid decision making that needs to happen. I mean, this is what they were doing. And every time they did it, they would come up with a solution. There's then the next solution that has to fix a little bit of that solution. And that iteration is really key when you're thinking about solving problems going forward, because it can be really paralyzing when you're like, well, what if I open the doors and it's too early, or I missed something, or whatever. Mistakes are going to be made. But you have to remember that you can always move forward. You will always move forward, because that's what life does. Life moves forward. So when we brought all these people together, what we did essentially was we took the strategic plan from being a document that was stored on the general manager's desktop to being a guiding force for the entire management team. And the thing is that as one of our, well, as it reveals the one-sidedness of strategic planning. That's what this process does, is that often it doesn't engage enough with the management team or the employees. And so when you think about engaging your customers, think about engaging your employees, like how can they be involved in the solutions, in the creating the strategic plan. Okay, so let's talk about a win room. A win room is where teams gather. So this is really a spin-off of a couple of things. One is a war room that the military uses, and you can sort of probably pretty easily imagine that it's like maps and data and where the troops are and logistics and all that. And a win room is really for businesses, a similar idea, which is like you've got the right data up, which is like sales reports. Do you know what's going on? If you have, if your company has locations across the US, then you need to know real-time data about what's going on with each area's reopening. You need to know what's going on with those customers. And so you want that information readily available. So you think about first you need to know the problem that you want to solve. But when you get in a win room, you want the right amount of data, you want the right kind of data, and you want to make sure that you have the right people in the room. And this is all about fast action. What I keep saying about, having a bias towards action is that a win room is about getting the right data, making decisions, and making strategic decisions, and making them quickly. You get back out the door. This is not the time for long analysis. This is like you get in, you discuss it, and then a group of people go out, marketing, sales, engineering, operations, whoever needs to go, gets out the door, they delegate the next set of tasks. And then in the afternoon or in the evening, they come back and you get a report out, what actually happened during the day. And so you're getting this sort of rapid iteration of changes. And one thing that's really important here is that you have the right person essentially in charge, like the commander, who drives and facilitates the cadence in the room. Because, face it, like, haven't we all been inside a conversation that went down a rabbit hole and we wondered, like, how did we end up here? This doesn't matter at all. And it can be energy sucking. And so you want someone who is able to really facilitate that role for your team, who says, like, look, this is what we're focused on fixing right now. Let's stay focused. Let's go back to this data. And this person really, it will benefit you to have this person be someone who is able to take in multiple pieces of information, sometimes conflicting information, be able to ask clarifying questions, and be cool in the face of tension and ambiguity, and be able to delegate to the right people. And that may not be the leader of the company. That may not be the CEO or the president. It may be someone else. And that's okay. That's one of the things that we're certainly seeing right now with COVID is that having this sort of top-down hierarchy isn't necessarily the exact right approach, that you may need to flatten this a bit. And you find that someone else is really key in that role. Yeah, and when you think about, if you have a very small team, then let everybody be in the room and be part of this decision-making. If you have a larger team, then what you want to think about is who are the key people that need to be in the room. If you have a 30-person management team, having 30 people in that room is going to drive you crazy, and it's going to be harder to get things done. Smaller tends to be faster. Having short, highly focused meetings, I sort of alluded to this, but you want, like, in the morning, it's like stand up, don't sit down, really get focused. And the driver for this, as it is, I think, just in life, is about asking the right and clearest question. What's the problem you're trying to solve right now? What's the immediate problem? What's the solution you're trying to get to? And so allow your team to be driven by the right questions. And ultimately, for this to be successful, it really requires your team to, have a mindset of operationalizing collaboration. That's just the expectation and the bias towards action. I want to say, as one of our team members has this to say about the win room, which is, a win room is the embodiment of your culture. The structure will reveal the gaps in your processes and with your team, which is actually a good thing. Even though if it hurts, we're seeing the gaps in our healthcare system. We're seeing it, in terms of the income disparities and poverty levels and the disparity of, treatment of African Americans by police. We are seeing this, and we need to be seeing it. And the same thing is true in business. When we put the blinders on, we put our business at risk. So we have to be willing to, sort of get in the arena, take a couple of hits, because we actually get stronger when we do that. So back to the client. So as a result of our work, what they were able to do is, so far, they've managed to identify 2.1 million in cost savings. I feel pretty good about that number. They have managed to implement a new brand awareness strategy. They've identified tools to enhance new product launch strategies, and their senior management team has been engaged in very specific deliverables. So this is and those are just sort of scratching the surface of the things that they've managed to accomplish. And there is more and there will be more. But this is an example of like when you get smaller, nimble teams that have specific objectives to focus on, and you give them the right tools and you give them the right mindset and leadership, that they can achieve things very quickly. Okay, some questions about before you pose a win room. What specific, so this is taking on that multi-speed management viewpoint, which is what problems, specific problems do we need to solve right now in the near future, and what do we need to be prepared to respond to in the future? And I know we're not, it's not like if we had a crystal ball, we would know exactly what we had to respond to, but you can take some guesses, where are the vulnerabilities in the business in terms of the supply chain, in terms of, what's going on with customers and employees. If we do another shutdown in the fall, what does that mean for your business? How do you, take what you've already learned and avoid it, maybe a further drop? Other questions to consider. And these are the more organizational soul searching questions that are going on right now, which is, who are we? How do we operate? And how will we grow? A way to find out if your entire team is on the same page with this is to pose the questions, have everybody write out their answers, and then share them. Share them just like on a screen or on a wall if you're in person, and see how close are you getting. And are those answers essentially still valid? Do they need to be looked at? Do they need to be shifted at all? Have they already shifted and you're just not sure what the next step is? But it's being able to ask the right questions can help you get to a place where you're moving towards the right solutions. Okay. And if these are questions that you're finding yourself wrestling with now, or you think you are going to pretty soon in the near future, feel free. You can either text me. That's my personal number there. You can text me and just say, hey, I'm trying to wrestle with some of this stuff. Or you can pop your name and your business name and however you'd like me to contact you in the chat box. All right. We can open it up for questions. We have about 10, 12 minutes. I'm going to stop share. All right.
And what I was thinking, instead of using the chat box at this point, if anyone had any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself. You can turn your cameras on. And if you wanted to ask Ariana or anyone from her team who's here, I see a couple of faces that were in the presentation, feel free to open it up to the floor for any questions.
Yeah, Cornelia actually put the link to that fashion show that I mentioned in the chat. And I really recommend you check it out because it's got video of the dresses moving and it's magical. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? Thanks, Cornelia.
All right, well, let's see, I see Mike said, thank you for the dresses video. It looks like we may not have any questions. If people wanted to, would you mind just putting that slide up again? And again, this will be shared, but if you could put the slide up again, Ariana, that has your information, that if people, because one of the things I found in these webinars is that sometimes people will have a personal question about their business that they don't want to share openly and publicly. So then maybe you just make your information available so that people could reach out to you again, and maybe they'll want to have a more in-depth conversation, either over email or by phone. That may be the best course of action to take. Because I know sometimes the questions that you may have may be a little bit personal, and you may not want to necessarily share it with a big group, and that's totally fine. Just making sure that everyone has access to you.
Right. Good point. Thank you. Rachel, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Excellent. Thank you. I mostly want to say thank you to you for taking the time to do this, and my apologies for having to join so late. We are getting ready to open, which is why I was late. So we're doing our own strategies. Maybe being here would have helped me figure that part out, but I just wanted to say thank you for showing up and sharing all your great expertise with us. So I'll catch up on whatever shared later and see what I missed. But
okay, cool.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Rachel, I will send you the link direct once
Great.
the video's up on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Once I saw that the governor had put into effect phase 3, I knew today was going to be a super busy day for you. So
yeah, it has been a busy time, but we're excited about it. So
yeah, we're excited for you. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up a little early today. Again, this video will be made available on the Chamber's YouTube channel, on the Chamber's website, and I'll share the link with Ariana so that she can share it with people as well, anyone who contacts her. Again, thank you to Ariana Blossom and Blossom Consulting and her team for being here today. The information that you shared was super valuable. And to all of you that are in attendance, you guys just continue to be safe and be resilient during this time. We're all in this together. Yeah. All right. You guys have a great day. See you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, David.
Thanks so much.
Very
Have a
welcome.
good day, everybody. Thank you.